going on, everybody? Happy Friday. Welcome to another edition of Mean Streets powered by FTN right here on Game Plus Network. Also live on our FTN Network YouTube page. If you're hanging out, don't be afraid to smash that like button. If you have any questions, now's the time. This is finally it. We've been talking about all the divisional matchups all week long. Today's the day where we're going to hammer home the picks, straight up picks for those that can you make adjustments in your bracket? I don't think so. If you can, you should just scrap that league. You can't be making adjustments, but we will visit my bracket from before the playoffs started, picks against the spread, some totals, a couple NFL props I wanted to share with you guys. A great guest today, fantastic guest, Joe Pisapia of Fantasy Pros. He's the author of the Fantasy Black Book series. You guys are well aware of the Fantasy Black Book series football. We actually had an NHL Fantasy Black Book series. We should revisit that. Maybe Pisapia and I will chat that up. I love Joe. Joe's fantastic. One of my good friends, of course, those that over at Anthem Sports and Entertainment, Game Plus Network, very familiar with Joe Pisapia. So we're going to touch on a couple things. Of course, we will dive into the 4 divisional matchups, get his thoughts on who he likes. I see some people hanging out with some one and done strategy and some questions. I'm going to present a lineup to you today. B Hockey in the house would love to know what y'all would suggest for a quarterback strategy and one and done this week. So it's something that we talked a lot about last week. My overall strategy was to roll with Josh Allen in week 1, to roll with Joe Burrow in this round, Patrick Mahomes in the championship round, the AFC championship, conference championship week, and then take whatever side makes it into the Super Bowl from the NFC. That was my overall strategy. Now, of course, like things may be different for you. Who you picked last week, I'm not totally sure, but that was my overall strategy because I'm actually pretty comfortable rolling out like a full stack in the Super Bowl with whatever team makes it the NFC. Guys, the Giants could win this week. I just don't think that they're going to make it to the Super Bowl. That's it. If they win a division rivals, I wouldn't be shocked. Been saying it all week. I like the Giants on the spread. I'm rocking green, of course, like a loser. But ultimately, I do believe that it's either going to be the Eagles, the Cowboys, or the 49ers that get to the Super Bowl. And I'll be comfortable rolling whatever stack. Like whether it's a Dak and company, we could roll out Schultz this week and still have a Dak and a Pollard and also like a CeeDee Lamb. You got all the San Fran guys that I don't think I'm going to touch this week, right? You know, Purdy has been fine. This is going to be his true test, but I'd still be comfortable with him as my quarterback in the Super Bowl and all the yak monsters that they have in Debo and Kittle and Brendan Ayuk and again, CMC, like, and even on the Philly side of things, right? Jalen Hurts is on his way to winning the MVP before the injury happened, arguably number 1 fantasy quarterback at the time. You know, you got 2 top 10 wide receivers this year in Devontae Smith, AJ Brown, Miles Sanders out of the backfield, Dallas Goedert. So even if the Giants make it, you still have some pieces on the Giants squad. So we'll dive into strategy, B Hockey in just a little bit. We'll answer some of those questions. We'll touch with Joe Pisapia on maybe his thoughts on that. Kyle Woods is in the house. Let's go. Happy Friday. Favorite one and done tight end, looking at Schultz and Ingram. There's actually a lot of interesting tight ends this week. I mean, Travis Kelce has the best possible matchup for a tight end. Actually, lies. Travis Kelce has the second best matchup for a tight end. Jacksonville, the 3rd most yards allowed to the position, the 3rd most yards per attempt or per catch to the position. The worst team in football remaining against tight ends, the Giants. Dallas Goedert is in a good spot. And then you have Evan Ingram, right? Of course, I like Evan Ingram this week. Kittle, like there's as bad as the tight end position was this year in fantasy, the remaining tight ends are pretty good. And if you rolled out Schultz last week, fantastic stuff. Even Gerald Everett caught a few passes. Ingram was okay. So there's some interesting targets this week. For me personally, I probably lean with Ingram because I think Dallas could upset, and I don't mind saving him. I would project Ingram or Schultz for more points this week, but I don't believe that the Jaguars are going to beat the Kansas City Chiefs. And that's what it's all about. One and done, you want to survive. So we'll talk some strategy again, and we'll dive into all that stuff with Pisapia. And also, you know, since he has just released the Fantasy Baseball Black Book, I want to get some thoughts on you know, some baseball targets. Just, you know, we won't dig too deep. We'll just a little bit of baseball talk here. We're going to really start to dive into baseball in the coming weeks here on this show. Team previews, targets, sleepers, busts, breakouts, all that stuff. Of course, we do have our baseball draft guide, courtesy of Vlad Sedler and the squad. Michael Govier, a part of that squad, as well as myself. And even George, he did a lot of work in that baseball guide. We do have projections live, everything live, all that good stuff over at ftnfantasy.com. So maybe we'll just visit like the top 12 pitchers on average, the first round ADP, if there's any holes, if there's any players that Joe feels like, because he does a great job of determining value in drafts. Now, you could say that there's no wrong pick in the first, but is Bobby Witt Jr. a guy that Joe wants to take in the first few picks? We'll talk about that and more. And we will hammer home some picks against the spread, props, all that good stuff. NHL picks, only 2 games in the ice, but you guys know I have like a dozen hockey picks for you. That's kind of how we roll in the show. Want to give us a little bit of love to an FTN member last night who came first, second, and third in a DFS contest. It's Mr. Drew Fantasy. And we have some things happening on our websites, FTN Daily, FTNBets.com, free trials as well. If you visit those 2 websites, Govier, do you have, there you go, FTNDaily.com/free, FTNBets.com/free. Included in this DFS package or the free 3-day trial, you can sign up for free, obviously, at any moment and see what we have to offer. Not everything is behind the paywall, but you have the optimizer, you have the NBA optimizer, big night in the NBA today, NFL with all the games, PGA, of course, and then projections tools, Discord channel, and FTN Bets, all the picks across all sports. I do believe our guy, George, made a little something for Drew I wanted to show off as well. There we go. Look at this guy. First, second, and third, the trifecta. Jason Tatum for 3. Book it. Fantasy Guru Drew, get it done. A lot of sharp minds over at FTNDaily.com. If you wanted to get involved and see exactly what we have to offer, I encourage you guys to check out for free. Pisapia is hanging by. I think he's actually here. Hey, yo, he is here. We're going to break and we're going to bring in Mr. Joe Pisapia of Fantasy Pros. He's in here next. Keep her locked.
I can't say enough about what we've got going on over at FTNBets.com.
At FTN Bets, your bankroll can be profitable. With the FTN Bet Tracker, you can tell your favorite experts across all sports, including the NFL, NBA, and Major League Baseball.
Welcome back to Mean Streets here on Game Plus Network. I'm your host, Chris Meaney.
And with our premium content, you can take your bets to the next level. Only $49.99 a month. Use the tools the pros use at FTN. Our betting models run over 100,000 simulations of every game, with sides and totals in the NFL, the NBA, and more. Use the home run predictor to see who'll hit a bomb deep. Our NFL player projections will make you a DFS king. And the FTN Prop Shop always finds the best odds for your player props. All tools, projections, and models are powered by FTN Data.
Welcome in. There's the old boy, Joe Pisapia of Fantasy Pros, and the man behind the Fantasy Black Book series just released the baseball version. Oh yeah, right behind you. Man, I always love the titles, but you somehow like the cover, but you somehow find a way to top it every single year. How do you do that?
Well, you hire the right people, Meaney. I have very little artistic ability in that end. My youngest daughter, incredible at drawing. My father, an architect. So I can only assume that the pen and the paper and all of that visual end of creativity just skipped a generation. I'm just useless there. But what are you going to do? That's why you hire good people, Chris Meaney. That's why you do it.
Yeah, I don't believe you. You're very artistic. I don't believe you for 1 second.
not in the pen and paper visual medium. In more of the expressive medium, yes, that might be true. But in terms of like the visual arts, I'm not your guy, probably. Although I'm okay at Pictionary. I'm all right there. I can
Oh,
get by with the
okay.
safety.
All
We'll
right.
figure it
Big
out. Yeah.
Pictionary player. I could see that about you. I want to talk football with you, but I have to talk baseball. Why don't you take the time to talk about we do this every year, those that know you and know me, but I feel like they still get some new viewers and listeners that, stumble across my show. And you've done such a great job over the years, man, of just identifying value. And this book is so informative. And I mean, the entire series, right? The baseball and the football. And I joked off the top, you and I did hockey one year, and we may have to revisit that at some point.
I
in
would
the
love
future.
to. It's
Yeah,
so hard. It's like not enough hours in the day. It feels like
there
that's the
isn't.
problem.
There,
But
there
you
really
know,
isn't. But talk to me about the Black Book, what it has to offer, where you can get it, all the good stuff that
absolutely.
it has to
Well,
offer, Joe.
look, it's an incredible crew of people, and that's where it always starts. Again, you're a good manager when you hire the right people. Like the people who run FTN, they hire good people like Chris Meaney. It makes life a lot easier on them, and that's what I try to do also. But relative position value, trying to understand where the value is on the board, players compared to their peers, just how much more valuable they are. I always say rankings are good, tiers are better. Quantified rankings. That's what the difference is. That's how you find value when you're approaching not just your snake drafts, but also all those salary cap formats too. Best ball drafts, all those things too. We're most comprehensive dynasty guide you're going to find out there too. 100 prospect profiles from Eric Cross, who's the best in the business there. The Welsh, our boy Chris Welsh, doing all of the draft strategies this year. Paul Sporer writes up all the pitchers. So this is like an all-star grouping here of people every single year we get. We got a great team, and it's a great way to kind of launch yourself in if you're a dynasty player, redraft player, if you're coming back to fantasy baseball. Because I see a lot of people starting to come back to fantasy baseball in the last year or so, maybe post-pandemic, maybe they're missing it a little bit.
Yeah.
So this is a great way to get back into it. But if you're a serious player too, and you're playing in some of these big time money leagues too, we've got all that covered for you as well. It's like I said, it's something that's updated. I do the RPV cheat sheets too for a little extra dough. You can get the updates every time I update something, just like we do for the NFL version too. So you can stay up to date and get those PDF right there for you for your drafts. You can print them out and bring them with you. You can use them on your computer. So it's we try to be that one single guide for all of your leagues. Doesn't matter if you play points, roto, doesn't matter. We're going to help you win those leagues.
It's a lot of weird leagues out there. You got to cover them all. Joe Pisapia 17 on Twitter for all the info. You mentioned Eric Cross. He got his super sharp dude. He has his handprints on our FTN fantasy baseball draft kit as well. I know people are in here for some NFL and one and done. We'll get to it in a second. But since I have Joe, there's always so many things I want to chat to him about. But we did this a couple weeks ago. You mentioned high stakes, a lot of money. Govey, if you can chuck up one of the two boards, we have a board of the top 12 pitchers on average over the last 4 weeks. What do you see when you look at this board? Is there a name that jumps up off the page at you as screaming value, or is there one that maybe, because I feel like the industry is talking about maybe avoiding the top few pitchers this year, living in the 12 to 22 range of average depth in those pitchers and getting some elite bats off the top. What is your strategy and what pitcher here jumps off the page? You and I are big Brendan Woodruff guys. I feel like he's
sure.
Low.
Look, I think there's a ton of those guys in that pitching market. And you started to see them start to pop as you're getting closer and closer to that 12 spot, right? So I'm of one of those minds too, and it's not even just because I don't necessarily value the top pitchers. I mean, I'm a big points league player head to head, our home league that you and I play in for years together too. Same strategy, right? Same situation. You have to have those elite starters, but at the same time, it's hard to find offense. You got to make sure you're locking those offensive players. I've done a couple mock drafts on our software at Fantasy Pros, which is open now on the Draft Wizard, where you can kind of mix and match. You can do a bunch of picks and then kind of revert back and then do some others and see how your team goes out, which is really a great value way of looking at things and trying to get your strategy. And every time I start off in the first couple rounds with hitting, I like my team a lot more than I do because I'm finding value in that pitching wheel. When you get to the Rodons, when you get to the Shane Biebers, even guys like Alek Manoah, Kevin Gausman, Yu Darvish, Freed, Christian Javier, I think is going to take a huge step forward this year too. Is one of my favorite guys. You can find guys who are going to pitch like aces. And with the way we see, guys who don't get to 200 innings anymore, with the way you see pitching kind of being devalued across the board at Major League Baseball, I think it's better to have a staff of really good pitchers than necessarily look for that elite guy who's going to cost you some of those elite bats. That's just the way I see the board this year. It's not a knock on those elite guys, but how much difference is there between the season that somebody in that top 5 is going to have and potentially a guy like Manoah could have, or a guy, even you see Spencer Strider, going somewhere around the 6th spot he's on our rankings over Fantasy Pros.
It's a little
You know,
rich.
I mean, there's also huge risk in guys like DeGrom, guys like Shane McClanahan. I think there's huge injury risk there that I just don't want to take that on. There's always risk with every sport, but there's more risk with pitchers, and there's more risk with certain pitchers that we know every time we see them get hurt. I mean, Jacob deGrom's been that guy for every year now, and the fact that he still goes as high as he does, I get it. I understand the upside, but there's just too much downside at the same time for me.
You could start a draft with like at the end of the first with a DeGrom and Trout. I mean, geez, you could win that chip, or you could be done in the first month or so. I mean, there's certainly a lot of risk with those two guys. You mentioned Christian Javier, and I love it. He's a huge target of mine as well. I had him in a lot of leagues. I think I have him in your dynasty format.
Well, if you do, I had him last year, and I wanted to keep him for the buck. But you know me, I went big or went home last year.
Okay,
all those old fart expensive starting pitchers, and I got to the finals and I lost because stupid Verlander and Scherzer and all those guys didn't make it to the finish line. Very frustrating.
Very frustrating. Yeah. And now the old boys are teammates again.
I know.
So, Govier, could we bring up the top 12 and we'll wrap up for baseball on this? Because this is very interesting. I don't remember a time where there was just, you could make a case for 5 or 6 guys to be the first overall pick. Like, honestly, I really don't remember. Because Trout obviously for a few years was 1-1-1, and then last year there was some Soto talk, and even Ramirez was kind of in the conversation. Ronald Acuna Jr. Over at NFBC, I got it since the last 4 weeks here. There is a min pick of 1 for Trey Turner, Jose Ramirez, Ronald Acuna Jr., Aaron Judge, Julio Rodriguez, and Shohei Ohtani, who you see on that board at number 8. If you had first pick, who would you take?
Well, if I had first pick in a league where Shohei Ohtani is a pitcher and a hitter, because he is in real life, it's Ohtani because you're getting 2 players for 1. So in the daily transaction leagues of any kind, or a league that values him as those 2 players, then he is by far the guy. Now he comes with risk because if you have an arm injury, it takes him away from everything. So you're losing 2 players, which trying to fill the 2 spots is very difficult. So obviously there's some risk reward there. But to me, I still like the guys like Acuna and Julio at the top, and I'll tell you why. As great as Trey Turner is, and he's a good player, and he's going to be going into a more home run friendly environment, and there's no doubt about that. I think for the first half of the year, they're going to really miss Bryce Harper in that lineup, the lineup protection he provides. But outfield is rough. I mean, after you get past the first 15 outfielders, it's kind of just landmine central, in my opinion. And the depth is just not there. Now, there's a chance that over time, you're going to have guys emerge. The Corbin Carrolls of the world hopefully emerge, and you're going to get bounce back seasons from guys like Luis Robert. You're going to get, some guys like that who are going to start to, I think, show themselves. Maybe you get like a better season from a Chris Bryant who qualifies in the outfield. Brian Reynolds, first half, second half, drastically different player. But really, once you get past 15, 16, you're asking a lot of some of these guys who either have lack of performance track record, injury history, guys are still waiting, on to pop. It's just so many questions. So I like getting the early outfielder personally. I think Julio is just off the charts. I think Julio could be a 40-40 guy. He's just unbelievable. I think Acuna is the safer one, potentially. I do think the power will bounce back. Everybody thought, he's coming off the knee injury. He won't steal bases, but the power will be there. And it was the opposite. So it goes to show you what the community knows. But I think what you do is you go look back and you say, hey, I feel, good about what he did last year. The knee's healthy. And now more time removed from the surgery, he'll be better off. But I think those are the 2 guys, specifically Acuna and Julio, that I would go back and forth between. Judge, look, asking him to hit 60 home runs again, that's a lot. And Trey Turner, great player. I know he gives you everything you like there. But to me, I think even the 3 outfielder league, the outfielders to me a little bit more appealing.
I couldn't agree more. I'm a big Julio guy. He's probably my 1, and then I would go Ronald Acuna after. It's funny, the Atlanta staff told him, like let's ease you back in. Don't be stealing all these bags. And I think he stole 2 in the first game back. And he's just it's in his nature. He can't help it. What do you mean? You're going to tell me not to steal bags? I'm stealing bags. One more thing on the way out. It's outside of fantasy. Shohei Ohtani. What team does he play for next year? Is it your Mets? Might be.
You know me. I'm the biggest self-loathing Met fan that there is. But Uncle Steve has given me, hope. He is going to outspend everybody else. And I think, look, no offense, I know it's your Angels. I know this is kind of a personal thing for you.
You can't bother me.
But I think the Angels are at best the 4th team in that division right now. I think what Texas did is really eye-opening. The pitching they brought in, in the last year or two. If John Gray pitches well and Eovaldi pitches well and DeGrom can make 25 starts, I'm not asking for a lot here. That could be a very competitive team. Josh Young coming back for that team. If you are the Angels, you need so much help trading Ohtani for all the prospects you can get. If you can get an Alvarez for the Mets and a Beatty, like if you can get 2 premium prospects and then some bodies, that goes a long way to remaking that team. And I feel like the Angels will be better served in the long term doing that deal. And then the Mets are okay making that move because it fills their 2 biggest holes. Another starter in the rotation. And on top of that, another left-handed power bat, which they really don't have in that lineup. So to me, it makes perfect sense. Ohtani in New York, Madison Avenue will sell itself. He will be appointment viewing. And look, Scherzer and Verlander, we talked about it, the old farts there. They're not long anymore. They're getting to 40. So you have to have somebody who's going to take you through those next couple of years. So to me, it would make a lot of sense that it is the New York Mets. I'm sure the Yankees will be in that conversation. But at the end of the day, the worst thing for the rest of the league is that the Mets did not waste money on Carlos Correa. Instead, they've pocketed that, and they're going to spend it on probably Shohei Ohtani next year.
It was an amazing article from Adrian Gonzalez talking about potentially Shohei getting $500 million next year. There were multiple MLB executives that referenced that in the article. Like it's most likely going to happen, whether it's from the Mets, from the Dodgers, or the Yankees. And I would agree. I'd say it's probably in the best interest. Although all the money that they do bring in from Ohtani, of course, with endorsements and everything, with Ohtani, and you can see the spike in attendance when they have Ohtani days, and they have tons of Ohtani days. And by the way, they have no Ohtani days, like bobblehead special giveaways in the second half of the season. So
that's what makes him a really tough wager this year on the MVP market, because if he does get dealt to the National League, that could really change things dramatically. So this is the first year where I'm not going to have money on him to start the year. I'm going to have to wait and watch a little bit.
And if he's not signed by like the deadline, if you're the Angels, you should trade this guy, right? You should get what you can for some prospects. I agree. You mentioned Carlos Correa. I saw a great Photoshop of the MLB The Show game.
Yeah,
did you
I saw
see
that
it?
too. Yeah, I did.
Correa with the Giants and the Twins, and then your Mets in there as well. Fantastic. All right, baseball talk's over. Everybody wants to talk about NFL. Joe, hang by. We're going to break, and we're going to dive into what will be a fantastic weekend in the NFL. Keep it locked.
At DraftKings Sportsbook, you can bet on nearly any sport imaginable. The NFL, the NBA, college football, college basketball, golf, the NHL, tennis, Major League Baseball, MMA, and more. Download the DK Sportsbook app on iOS and Android operating systems, as well as on your desktops or in mobile browsers. Get the best bonuses using promo code FTN. Remember, the only way to gamble responsibly is to win. Prize Picks is a creative new way to parlay picks based on expected fantasy point production and single stat projections. You pick 2 to 5 players and predict if they'll go over or under their projected fantasy point total or their single stat total. When parlaying the players, the larger your parlay, the better the payout. A 2-pick entry pays 3x. A 3-pick entry pays 5x. A 4-pick entry pays 10x. As a bonus offer, there's a flex play option. This provides an added level of security on your entry where you can decrease your multiplier received if you miss one of your entries but hit on all the others. At FTN, we have Prize Picks coverage for every sport in both article and standalone pick format on our Prize Picks pick tracker. Use promo code FTN for a 100% deposit match on your first deposit of up to $100.
Welcome back in. Let's dive into the divisional round. Let's start in the AFC, Joe. You and I chatted earlier in the week over at Fantasy Pros, yourself and Matthew Friedman, and we dove into the Kansas City Chiefs and the Jacksonville Jaguars. The line has moved a little bit. I'm seeing some 9s out there, but what we chatted about was just how how great really Andy Reid was after a bye. 28-5 over the course of his career as a head coach. It's including playoffs. Mahomes 9-1 after a bye, and his Chiefs averaging 30 points in those games. 8.5, as you see on the board, 9 again in some spots. This is people talking one and done here, some strategy. I don't know if you're in any one and done leagues. I don't know if you're feeling an upset, but I would imagine if you are in a one and done league, you got to be thinking about some Jaguars here, whether it's, Christian Kirk, Evan Ingram, or are you feeling like we could see an upset this weekend?
No, look, I've been very pro Jaguars for since the beginning of the season. Honestly, I mean, we're using them as a DFS defense, and many times they were very cheap. They get you 9-10 points, and they did. I love the run they were on at the end. I've got shares of Christian Kirk, Zay Jones, Trevor Lawrence, and Dynasty. I'm a supporter of the Jags, and I was somebody who bet them on the money line last week. Got a little tenuous there after the first quarter, so I was very, very worried about that wager, but it all came around. Peterson's done a great job. Lawrence did a great job. As much as I do believe the Chiefs have some deficits, and this is not the same dominant team that we saw win a Super Bowl with Tyreek Hill a couple years ago. Some of those players on defense aren't there anymore. I think you look back now and you say, I just feel like they're out of their class right now. And that's okay. Getting into the playoffs after the season they had last year is a huge accomplishment. And I know this sounds like I'm being condescending. Oh, you cute little Jaguars. You moved on. I'm so excited for you. Oh, look at you. You won your first playoff game. You're so adorable. But look, they're playing the Kansas City Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes. This is the measuring stick in the AFC at the end of the day. It's still going to be them. It's going to be Joe Burrow, Josh Allen, those teams. So the Jaguars can go out there with no pressure and play hard. And if anything here, I'm on the over because I do think this is a team that doesn't have quit in them. They also have to be very careful. They cannot fall behind the way they did to the Los Angeles Chargers last week. You can't do that because this is Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. You give them opportunities, it's bye-bye. There's no epic comebacks here. I don't see that happening, not with Patrick Mahomes. So it should be a very entertaining game. I hope it is. I hope it's competitive, but at the end of the day, I think they're just going to be outclassed. But I do think the over is very much in play because I think the Jags need the experience going out there, even if they're getting blown out in the fourth quarter. Go out there, try to put some drives together, try to put some points on the board, and that garbage time could even potentially make that number of the 9 or somewhere in that thereabout possibly in danger too.
The total has moved up a little bit, but I still like it at 52.5. I know it was 51 when we chatted. Yeah, I feel like Kansas City probably gets to 30 themselves. Like Mahomes tossed 4 touchdowns in that game. And if there's a weakness, I mean, there's a couple weaknesses of the Jags defense, but they're pretty good against the run, but they don't really want to run anyways in Kansas City. So I feel like they probably get 4 touchdowns and Trevor Lawrence and company is good enough for a couple. I think there could be some sort of backdoor. It's interesting, the coaching, duo, right? Like they know each other so well, right? I mean, I like Doug Peterson as a head coach and a play caller as well. He spent time with Reid in Green Bay. He spent time with him in Kansas City. He spent time with him in Philadelphia. So that should be a nice little battle between those two, trying to one up each other in terms of play calling. Okay. I was going to bring up this stat. It's just so jokes for you stat nerds out there. And I know I'm one. Trevor Lawrence is 35-0 on Saturdays.
Yes, I saw that too.
You saw that, right? It's like,
yeah, sure. I mean, look,
college, but
look, games in college, and some of those, when you're playing Bemidji State, one of those Saturdays or something like that, it's probably an easy W. Like there's some easy W's in there.
Favorites.
Yeah. But look, hey man, I love Trevor Lawrence. We're finally seeing the generational quarterback talent that we knew we were going to be getting into the league. Now that he has somebody who has half a brain leading that team. So it's great. It's just, it would be an epic story, an incredible win. I just don't think it's going to happen. Not coming off a bye.
It really would be. And next year, they're going to add Calvin Ridley, too. So we could see a lot of Trevor Lawrence and company in the playoffs in the next couple years. Mm-hmm. Over to the other game in the AFC. This is the game we all wanted to see a few weeks ago. And we're so happy that Damar Hamlin is healthy and on the rise and potentially may be there at this game, coming out of the tunnel for the boys. And it's going to be an emotional game for both squads. I see 5.5 in some spots for the Bills. Michael Govier running the show for us is all over the Bengals. George is a big Bengals guy as well. Josh Allen versus Joe Burrow. Neither of these teams looked great last week. They escaped against divisional opponents, but also backup quarterbacks. And Skyler is like the third string quarterback. And you could make the case that maybe the Bills should have lost that football game. Also, maybe the Bengals with a turning point at the end when Just like I said on it's like it reminded me of Space Jam, like when Trevor Lawrence did it with the arc stretch, and then we saw Huntley try to do it, but it was like, whoa, it's like Muggsy Bogues maybe trying to do it, and he couldn't get it done. But who would you rather have if the game's on the line, tie game, fourth quarter? Which quarterback would you like to have to orchestrate potentially a game-winning drive?
Well, put me with George and Govier because I'm on the Bengals side too. I have them. I bet them on the money line when it was at plus 200. I want Joe B. Joe B is that guy that's shown you he'll get knocked down. I mean, how many times did he get knocked down last year and he kept getting back up and kept finding ways to win football games? He has that confidence. And I understand there's injuries to the offensive line. They're important, but they have some backups there that have some experience starting. So it's not like you're going to guy. I mean, one of the backups was one of the lead guys at Clemson, one of the tackles. So it's not like you're downgrading prospect wise, like the worst tackle that you just found, off the scrap heap somewhere. So I think they can hold it together enough. And, the Ravens defense is outstanding. So they're going to give you problems. I mean, Roquan Smith is just, when he arrived there, they were number 2 in terms of defensive points that they gave up. 14.7, I think it was the number since Roquan showed up. It was number 2 in the league. That was incredible. Stud. So I am far less impressed by the Buffalo Bills victory because that's Skylar Thompson. That's a Dolphins team that is dragging themselves hurt into Buffalo to play this game with a third string quarterback. And that game went down the last 2 minutes of the game. That to me is, and the other problem is Josh Allen in some of these games, he tries to do too much. Sometimes he's his own worst enemy. If you remember a couple years ago, that game against Indianapolis, remember when the Colts and Philip Rivers came to town and Josh Allen was having a great season and he started to do too much, trying to get cute here, trying to keep plays alive, taking big sacks for big losses. You can't do that in these games. And when that Josh Allen shows up in some of these big moments, it's still concerning. So for me, I would still take Joe Burrow. I'm taking the Bengals in this game. I think it's going to be epic, fantastic. I can't wait to see it. But my faith is in the Bengals. And you saw early on too, in that game that got canceled, Joe B 4 for 4, 52 yards, perfect passer rating. I mean, they looked like they had exactly the game plan they wanted to run against the Buffalo Bills. And I think they're chomping at the bit to go back out there and run it again because it was right.
Yeah, absolutely. They were on their way, man. Burrow was chucking it around. You bring up a good point about the Ravens, and I think that's the thing where I'm more so willing to just like cross off last week because they played a really good defense. And what you said about Miami, and like I just felt like the Bills were really sloppy. And not only can you give the edge to Burrow, you got to give the edge to the receiving core as well in Cincinnati. As like the weapons that they have. I mean, Jamar Chase is catching like 7 passes weekly. And some statistics here: Joe Burrow versus AFC North teams, 4-3, 13 touchdowns, 9 picks, only 257 passing yards. And then against teams not in the division, 9-1, 290 passing yards, 23 touchdowns, and just 3 picks. That's pretty, like, there's some good defenses, of course, inside the NFC North. And it's hard. That's why I think people are picking, more so the Giants there this week, which we'll get into. Maybe one more segment, if you don't mind. We'll break and we'll talk some NFC. I'm a sucker because I jumped on the 4 points in Cincinnati on Monday, and it's like 5.5 now. I'm like, I wouldn't mind that like extra point. I think the Bills win, but I do believe that it's going to come down to whoever has the ball last. And I've heard a lot of people talking about Joe Burrow playing hero ball, and I couldn't agree more. He does play a little bit of hero ball, man. His ADOT in the fourth quarter against Miami when they were up like almost 2 scores was like 23.4. What are you doing? Why are you?
And McPherson's a big money kicker. Don't forget about that either, Chris. McPherson, that kid is a big money kicker already. He's got ice water in the veins. That's what I mean. Like this, the Bengals have no fear of anybody. And that is a very dangerous thing. And I think it's so dangerous that they're underdogs in this game. I think you're just writing into that narrative that they want, and I think they're going to come out guns a-blazing. And Buffalo, God bless them, it's a great team. I love Allen. I love the players. I love the story. It's a lot of emotions, but they've been through a lot in the last couple of weeks emotionally.
They really
sometimes that takes a lot out of you, and Cinderella turns into a pumpkin, or at least the carriage does, something like that.
9 straight wins for the Bengals. They kind of went on this run last year where everyone really counted them out. It's very similar, and they rolled through the AFC as well. And that's what I thought last week was maybe it was too much of an emotional high. Like the week before with Nyheim Hines and all that stuff, like the return to start the game and 2 touchdowns. And it was a very emotional game. And I just feel like maybe that kind of caught out to them last week. But I think it's going to be the best game of the weekend, and it's going to be must watch. It should be really, really good. One more break here, and then we'll bring back Joe, and we'll talk about those NFC teams. Is he feeling an upset? Another upset. We'll talk about it next year on Mean Streets.
At DraftKings Sportsbook, you can bet on nearly any sport imaginable. The NFL, the NBA, college football, college basketball, golf, the NHL, tennis, Major League Baseball, MMA, and more. Download the DK Sportsbook app on iOS and Android operating systems, as well as on your desktops or in mobile browsers. Get the best bonuses using promo code FTN. Remember, the only way to gamble responsibly is to win. Prize Picks is a creative new way to parlay picks based on expected fantasy point production and single stat projections. You pick 2 to 5 players and predict if they'll go over or under their projected fantasy point total or their single stat total. When parlaying the players, the larger your parlay, the better the payout. A 2-pick entry pays 3x. A 3-pick entry pays 5x. A 4-pick entry pays 10x. As a bonus offer, there's a flex play option. This provides an added level of security on your entry where you can decrease your multiplier received if you miss one of your entries but hit on all the others. At FTN, we have Prize Picks coverage for every sport in both article and standalone pick format on our Prize Picks pick tracker. Use promo code FTN for a 100% deposit match on your first deposit of up to $100.
Chris Meaney and Joe Pisapia, 17 of Fantasy Pros, the man behind the Fantasy Black Book series. Get your copy today over at Amazon. Let's dive into the NFC side of things, Joe. Let's talk Eagles. Let's talk Eagles and Giants. It's okay. You can burst my bubble. I want to hear it anyways. Everyone's coming in here with the Giants. We did Giants last week. I'm rocking green like a homer here, and it's all good. All the money that has come in, the most bet team is the Giants this week on the money line and on the spread. And you and I, again, I'll reference the show, Fantasy Pros, the betting show. I think you got together on Thursday, maybe. We got together on Tuesday and we dove into this when we dove into Kansas City, and you did the other 2 games on the Thursday. I encourage everyone to go check that out. We talked about maybe if would there be any line movement? There really hasn't been. There was a 7.5, there was a 7 for a moment, and then a 7.5 again, and that's it. Drew Livingstone in the house, 7.5, easiest pick of the week. He's just trolling me. Forget about him. Stop it. What do you have, Joe? This matchup again, another divisional matchup. 3rd time these teams have faced each other. Daniel Jones and company coming in hot. Brian Daboll going to be coach of the year. Giants are feeling themselves right now, and the Eagles kind of limped in to the playoffs. 1 game over the last 5 weeks from Jalen Hurts, and didn't look fantastic in that game. 1 run design for him when he averages 5 per game. What do you make of this matchup? Do you see another upset?
Well, it's frustrating because I too am on the Giants on this. And I think the Eagles will win the football game, but that 7.5 is a good number there.
Large.
And it does feel too big, but the fact now that it's the most bet number is starting to give me some panic about it. Because how many times have we been down this road where like it looks like the best bet on this is it. All the data tells us attack this, and then Vegas goes out and builds a hotel because we're all wrong. Because that's typically what's happened, I feel like, all year. I've still already bet it anyway. I am still cautiously optimistic, and it's also because I think this is a different Giants team that the Eagles are getting this time around. They found something here with Isaiah Hodgins and Richie James. They found a little bit of a passing game. Hodgins has been terrific, especially in the red zone. I love him as the anytime touchdown scorer. Some spots you're getting anywhere from 2.5 to 3 to 1 on that. That's a great number for him, and he's been just producing in that role. I think that the Giants have a lot of confidence. I think that Brian Daboll has given them a little bit of swagger, which is something this team has not had in a very long time. They feel really good about themselves, and there's no pressure on them. Like they weren't supposed, another team that wasn't supposed to be in the playoffs. People, were skeptical they can go in and beat Minnesota. They did. And I think at the end of the day, Brian Daboll already has gotten to this team far above where I think the expectations were. The Eagles are a better team. It would not shock me if the Eagles came out flat. It would not shock me at one point if the Eagles were behind in this game. But I think the Eagles win this game, and that's, again, why I keep going back to the Giants side in the 7 or the 7.5, depending on where you can bet it. When you're a spot like Betting Pros, where you can see all the different lines in one spot, you can go look for a little half point. If you can get it somewhere else, that's fine. But I still come down to the Giants side, but it does have me worried. I'm not going to lie that it is the most aggressive number that's out there of these 4 games that people seem to love too, because that always seems to go poorly in 2022/2023.
Yeah, I agree. There's not a lot of teams covering these big spreads this year. It hasn't been the case. I love the Hodgins call. I think he's got 5 touchdowns in his last 6 games. He's been definitely a big.
It's like nobody cares but me. I got him in DFS lineups. I got anytime touchdown score so many times in the last 4 weeks. I know, but it seems like nobody's aware of it. And what a great story too. This was a guy that was the Bills just jettisoned.
Former Bill, right?
Yeah. I mean, Brian Daboll knew him from that offense there, plucked him from Buffalo, and said, yeah, we can use this. He just didn't fit in the depth chart where he was at Buffalo, and Brian Daboll has made the best of it, and they've given him, Daniel Jones was the first guy ever to make his first playoff start, have 300 yards passing, 70 yards rushing, and throw 2 touchdowns in the history of the NFL. This version of Daniel Jones, now, again, that's the Minnesota D. That's a different defense, but still, there's a confidence level here that I think makes them very dangerous. I don't know if it's enough to win this football game outright. It wouldn't shock me if they did, but I think at the very least, the 7 seems like a very big number for 2 teams in division rivals, familiarity, and the Giants playing fast and loose. The only problem with the Giants, Meaney, is another thing that we talked about too, which is how many road games have they played in the last few weeks?
3 in a row.
Is that going to catch up with them?
Yeah.
I know it's only a drive from North Jersey to Philly. It's not so bad, but still, it's still continuously on that road.
And a team that I think has lost 9 straight at the link as well. You mentioned very different team when these teams face each other in week 14. And it is. I mean, Adoree Jackson didn't play in that game. Xavier McKinney didn't play in that game. Leonard Williams, one of the better nose tackles in the league, in my opinion, didn't play in that game either. I think both teams are going to run the ball. I think potentially we could see the Eagles start off slow, like you said. And that's why I feel like the under is the play here. And I also feel like the Giants will cover. And Drew just had that stat there. Giants 3-5-1 in their last 9 games. Talking about them rolling his
and he's right about that. But and I know 2 of those big offensive outputs came against the Minnesota defense. I get that,
but still.
But you have to understand that breeds confidence in an offense and a quarterback that has had his confidence shaken over the last couple of years. There's no doubt about that. So there's a lot at stake here for the Giants. I think the Giants have started to understand, they are good enough to be in this competitive world that they're in the NFC. And the NFC has kind of been that weaker division all year. The Eagles have been the class of it, but the Eagles also were a team that I think struggled down the stretch in December a little bit. Obviously, injuries had a big part to do with that. Sweat, Hurts, all those guys who got hurt. Mm-hmm. It's all about, are you healthy? Did you have that week to rest up? Do you come out here a little flat because you haven't played in a while, or do you come out here rested and look like $1 million? How we see the Eagles come out in this first drive or 2 is going to be, I think, very important.
Yeah, and they had a season high 48 points in that game, 6 touchdowns, 254 rushing yards. I think Miles Sanders is in for a big day, and Daniel Jones over 45.5 rushing yards. I mean, this guy scrambles quite a bit, where Jalen is like a design. Like there's design runs for him and there's just scrambles, and the Eagles do struggle against quarterbacks that scramble. I mean, 3rd most yards allowed to quarterbacks when they are scrambling. So I think sometimes I feel like he just, if it's not there, and the Vikings allowed the most yards per pass attempt and the Eagles allowed the fewest. So there's going to be times where it's not there. Like we like Hodgins. He's going to have to deal with Darius Slay, and Bradbury is going to be on Slayton. So if it's not there, sometimes he just tucks and runs, and he's had some massive rushing games against Philly. I think he's going to be a big time problem with his legs. The final game, you mentioned 3 road games in a row. How about Dallas here facing the 49ers? San Fran having finished their game Saturday afternoon, comfy at home in their bed. Dallas playing Monday night. After that's like a 54 hour difference in terms of rest. Then they go back to Dallas, take the flight, and then they have to go to San Fran, take the flight to play the 49ers here. This spread is at 3.5 in some spots. You see 4.5 on the board. There's really been some line movement just lately, and the Cowboys looked really, really good last week. Was that on. Do you give Dak and company credit? You have to, I think, but is that more so on Tampa just being such an awful defense? This is defense number 1 according to Football Outsiders, and defense number 2. Dallas leads the league in takeaways. San Fran number 2. They've been 1 and 2 in offense since week 7. Week 7 was the moment that Dak returned to the lineup for the Cowboys, and it was the moment that CMC was traded to San Fran. There's a lot to unpack here in this game, and this is, to me, the toughest one to call.
This is the classic 4-outcome game, which is why I'm running away from it. I'm going to get some popcorn. I'm going to sit and watch it. 14-year-old Joe Pisapia, very excited. You know, you get there's rematch of the old school
94,
NFC,
95,
Michael Irvin. Yeah, you get the old Steve Young days and Troy Aikman. Those were amazing. Those were better than the Super Bowl most years, those games. So, look, we're coming back into this era where these teams are both good at the same time, which is great. There's so many variables, though, in this game. Number 1 variable is Brock Purdy. I mean, the combined record of the teams he's faced so far. And look, I'm not taking anything away from him. He's done everything he's asked of him. He's thrust in a tough situation. He has done very well. But they're 8 games under 500, those teams, right, that they played. And on top of which, you're facing a team that rushes the quarterback more than any other team, 25% rush rate. So that in and of itself, if Purdy gets hit, if Purdy gets knocked down, if Purdy gets sacked a lot, how does he react? This is a very different scenario than playing the Seattle Seahawks twice. You know, you want to talk about, you know, how great Purdy's been. Everybody out there, that's the narrative. But this is an actual test because this defense is aggressive. They come after you. They come after the quarterback. Can he get rid of the ball enough time? If he gets hit in the mouth, how does he adjust? You know, that's something we haven't seen yet. So we haven't seen Brock Purdy quite tested. We also don't know with this kicking game how that's going to impact this game too. Yeah, and that's why I can't even look at the over or the under in this game, because I don't know, are we going to get situations where it's 4th and 1 on the the 30-yard line and they should be kicking a field goal, but they don't. They got to go for it, and then you don't get those points on the board. You take that 3. Yeah. Are you going to get to a point where you're missing extra points again? What does that do? I mean, if anything, it makes you feel like it's the under, but there's such explosive talent in this game. At any given time, a McCaffrey, a CeeDee Lamb, a Tony Pollard can break away huge plays. This has 4 outcomes written all over it. This could be a close game where one side wins. It could be a blowout on either side, and none of us we don't be like, well, yeah, I'm not surprised. I mean, that's not shocking. I'm running away from this game. I think it's going to be fun to watch. And you're right. The Cowboys did play their best game, I would say, sans kicking. They played their best game collectively this past week, but it was against Tampa. How much do we want to take out of that? I don't know, because Tampa has no diversification of that offense. The best bet you could possibly make last week was the 27.5 completions on Tom Brady. I couldn't believe that number was so low. As soon as I saw it, I was like, take my money. Go. And as soon as they fell behind, I went, oh, great. This is fantastic. There's no way this doesn't come in. And of course it did, because they threw the ball 733 times this past year. 733 times.
I think I saw his attempt prop at like 43.5. I'm like, wow, that's pretty large, but it seems about right. And he had 66 pass attempts, which is fantastic.
Meaning, he only played in the 16 games too, right? Barely. Right. Yeah. And still 733 attempts. He had only, I think, 20 more attempts than last year, but over 5,200 yards last year. This year, 4,600 for Tom Brady. Very different version in terms of conversion. It's a very weird situation in Tampa. But look, man, this game, I don't know, man. This one to me is all just go watch it, enjoy it. To bet on it is chaos, I think. I really do.
Man, there's so much I'd love to talk to you about, but we're short on time, dude. You mentioned Brady. I want to get into Brady with you.
But we'll come back next week. We'll
get you out of here on this. Let us know who's in the Super Bowl and who wins it.
I'm thinking it's the Eagles and it's the Bengals. I think at the end of the day, that's the Super Bowl. I don't know if the NFL wants that, but I think that would be vastly entertaining. I do. To me, that's where it's going. I know you want it. That's for sure.
All the value is on Cincy, right? We've talked about it for weeks. It's been Cincy. As you see there, 7-1, Joe Burrow, MVP, all that good stuff. Joe, you're fantastic. Joe Pisapia 17. Go check him out. We got to get out of here, dude. Enjoy the football this weekend, and let's chop it up again very, very soon. We got some NFL picks, props, and NHL picks around on Mean Streets. We'll be back in a couple.
I can't say enough about what we've got going on over at ftnbets.com.
At FTN Bets, your bankroll can be profitable. With the FTN Bet Tracker, you can tell your favorite experts across all sports, including the NFL, NBA, and Major League Baseball.
Welcome back to Mean Streets here on Game Plus Network. I'm your host, Chris Meaney.
And with our premium content, you can take your bets to the next level. Only $49.99 a month. Use the tools the pros use at FTN. Our betting models run over 100,000 simulations of every game, with sides and totals in the NFL, the NBA, and more. Use the home run predictor to see who'll hit a bomb deep. Our NFL player projections will make you a DFS king. And the FTN Prop Shop always finds the best odds for your player props. All tools, projections, and models are powered by FTN data.
We went a little long with Joe. He's just so good. Couldn't help it. So we're going to rapid fire through some of this stuff here. And I know people are in for the one and done, so we'll get to that in just a moment. Just bring up the bracket here, Gove, if you don't mind. I'm not coming off of anything here that I started with, before the playoffs started. I think all these games are going to be tight. I really do. I think Kansas City and Jacksonville is going to be tight as well. There's some tough games to call. I think the Eagles will squeak out. I think maybe to tease down, it's kind of a coward bet, but you could do like a 5-point teaser and have Philly to win 2.5 spread and then Kansas City to win by a field goal. You could do something like that. I think both of those one seeds do find a way to move on. The other games are much tougher to call. I like the fact that the Bills have home field. I really do. I think that's, as I said multiple times on this show, I think it is going to come down to whoever has the ball last. But I am going to lean here with the Buffalo Bills at home. Same thing in San Fran. I'm going to lean with the San Francisco 49ers at home. These are the picks that I have against the spread. I kind of just gave them all to you as we're talking through the bracket there. I am going with I'm taking all the points across the board with everybody. My reason for the Eagles is, the Giants are playing really good. This is a much different defense. Are you kidding me? The secondary has been fantastic all year, even though they played some weaker opponents, including the Giants, where they really didn't give anything to Daniel Jones in that game offensively. They're a team that's going to be able to dominate the line of scrimmage. Do you have the picks, Gove? Let's chuck them up for the people. Picks against the spread and a couple totals in there. So Jacksonville +9, New York Giants +8, Cincinnati +5.5, Dallas +4. Use the prop shop to get the best possible odds. I do believe we're going to see some points in Dallas and San Fran because they're two of the top offenses since week 7, 1 and 2. And also defensively, they can make plays happen. Dallas leads the NFL in takeaways. San Fran is number 2. So I do believe we will see some offense. I think we'll see Dallas struggle to run the ball. I also think that Philly will run the ball pretty successfully like they did when these two teams played a couple weeks ago. So I do believe that 58, that's high. I don't believe that that's the total. It's 48. Definitely take the under 58. That should be under 48. We'll take the under 48. We'll take the over with Jacksonville KC. I think we'll see a lot of offensive firepower in there. One and done next. We'll break. We'll do one and done in the final block here. Keep her locked.
At DraftKings Sportsbook, you can bet on nearly any sport imaginable. The NFL, the NBA, college football, college basketball, golf, the NHL, tennis, Major League Baseball, MMA, and more. Download the DK Sportsbook app on iOS and Android operating systems, as well as on your desktops or in mobile browsers. Get the best bonuses using promo code FTN. Remember, the only way to gamble responsibly is to win. Picks is a creative new way to parlay picks based on expected fantasy point production and single stat projections. You pick 2 to 5 players and predict if they'll go over or under their projected fantasy point total or their single stat total. When parlaying the players, the larger your parlay, the better the payout. A 2-pick entry pays 3x. A 3-pick entry pays 5x. A 4-pick entry pays 10x. As a bonus offer, there's a flex play option. This provides an added level of security on your entry where you can decrease your multiplier received if you miss one of your entries, but hit on all the others. At FTN, we have prize picks coverage for every sport in both article and standalone pick format on our prize picks pick tracker. Use promo code FTN for a 100% deposit match on your first deposit of up to $100.
I really wish we had a little bit more time, but we got to get this show in under the time over on Game Plus Network. So here's the one and done lineup. Been talking strategy really all past couple weeks. I've been talking strategy here, and we had Saquon in the lineup last week. We removed him for Chris Godwin in the flex. Saquon and Miles, as I mentioned, I think it's going to be a low-scoring game, both running backs. I mean, the weakness with the Eagles is stopping the run. I think Saquon will be really involved, and I don't expect the Giants to move on in this game. I don't mind using Miles Sanders. This is a team that allowed the second most yards per carry this season. Miles Sanders has had some massive games over the course of his career against the Giants, including that Week 14 game. I really do believe he's going to be a big part of the offense. I don't like the Jags to move on, so I'm using some Jacksonville players here. Evan Ingram, Christian Kirk. We used Travis Etienne last week. If Travis Etienne is available to you, use Travis Etienne. My strategy has stayed true. I wanted to go last week. I went Allen. This week is Burrow. Next week will be Mahomes. And then whatever team comes out of the NFC, I'm comfortable rolling a Dallas stack, a 49er stack, or an Eagles stack, whatever it is. I think some Giants players are certainly in play for you if you wanted to go. I kind of like Slayton more than Hodgins this week. I think Hodgins has the tougher matchup against Slay. Slayton's kind of that big, deep threat guy, but we do like Hodgins on the show to have a touchdown. I also think Tony Pollard is in play. Dalton Schultz is in play as well. Those are the guys that I think that aren't on the board. I think you could roll with. My thinking is that Buffalo finds a way to win this game. And next week I'll have some Bills against Mahomes and company. And I will just roll with the NFC side. So I'll have Mahomes. I'll have like a big game stack, whether it's, you could maybe just come off Higgins and do Diggs there as well. But my thinking is that you will have some Buffalo and Kansas City players for next week. I saw the strategy earlier there where somebody used Allen ahead of instead of Burrow last week. Just can flip-flop and go that way. But there's a lot of good teams in the NFC that you can take for the Super Bowl. Drew Livingstone's hanging out, so don't use that lineup, good sir, in our one-and-done pool. On the way out, I'm going to save the Devontae Smith prop. I like his over 5.5 catch. You're going to save it for the NFL betting show coming your way on our FTN Network YouTube page at 5 o'clock Eastern. But here's the NHL picks as we get out of here. Only 2 games on the ice tonight. Nathan McKinnon over 4.5 shots. Drake Batherson over 2.5 shots. And then the other guys are juiced. Rodriguez and Kachuk, a little juice. So we're putting them into a parlay. Malkin Nichushkin. I like the over between Pittsburgh and Ottawa. I like Colorado on the puck line. And talked about all week the value with the Colorado Avalanche as they are second in the league in terms of shooting percentage. The worst shooting percentage at 5-5. We're starting to see them get healthy and they're starting to click. And the Vancouver Canucks can't keep the puck out of their net. I do like the over in that game as well. The Canucks have played to a lot of overs. Check out FTNBets.com for all the picks, all the props, and check out the FTN betting show. Enjoy the football this weekend. Should be fantastic. We'll be back on Monday. Have a good one. Cheers.